This government shutdown is affecting millions of Americans across all walks of life. It doesn't matter if you're part of the radical left or the extreme right wing, if you're in the military, elderly, have low income, or disabled. If you in some way rely on government benefits, your life is being significantly affected. So it's no surprise that this shutdown has resulted in a lawsuit against the government. But you might be surprised to know that this isn't the first time that a government shutdown has resulted in a lawsuit. In fact, it's actually happened twice before, back in 2013 and again in 2018. So join me in a legal deep dive of all the lawsuits involving the government shutdown. What's good, people? I hope you're all having a good holiday. And I tell you, it's changed a lot for me over the holidays. There used to be a time when I could sort of wind down. I would say, okay, end of the year, take some time off, kind of coast, take it easy. And that is just not the case anymore. The practice has changed so much. The number of lawyers working for me, the number of people working for me, not just, outside of town, but actually outside of the country, the amount of moving parts my firm has. There's absolutely no downtime at all coming from me. I'm actually going in 2026 hot. So that's what's happening on my end. What's good, people? The first thing I want to do is extend my condolences to everyone that's being affected by the government shutdown. And it's not a political blame game. It's just about acknowledging that there are people in our country that are truly suffering and suffering hard times. So I do want to acknowledge that, and because of that, I am certainly very well aware of how fortunate I am. I've made some plans to try to give back, maybe do something with the food bank, sponsor some families for food, something like that, so I can give a little something back to the community. All right, before we get into the thick of things, do me a favor, go ahead and like and subscribe to the podcast. So at this point, you're probably aware of the lawsuit that about 26 states have filed against the government due to the expiration of the SNAP benefits program. And the SNAP program is where the government provides financial assistance to low-income households so they can have enough money to buy food. But you'd be surprised to know this is not the first time that the government shutdown has resulted in lawsuits. In fact, there were lawsuits filed in 2013 and in 2018. Both lawsuits were the same, filed by federal employees who were required to work during the shutdown, but were delayed in receiving their payments. Now, I want to be clear, it's not that they weren't paid at all. It's just that the payments were delayed and they were not paid immediately. So the lawsuit alleges that the government should pay them overtime and basically a penalty for not paying them on time. The federal employees in the 2013 lawsuit actually won, and a judge ordered the government to pay them basically penalties and interest in the form of overtime for not paying them on time. However, that litigation took 5 years. In a very cruel, ironic twist, by the time the lawsuit was over, the government shut down for 2018 it started, and all the individuals that were necessary to make sure the payments got made were furloughed. So they still couldn't get their money. So the 2018 shutdown resulted in another lawsuit on the same basis, federal employees not getting paid on time, and they actually got the case in front of the same judge who made the same decision, and the government was ordered to pay the employees overtime for not paying them on time. However, both decisions got reversed on appeal, and in the end, the government won. And while the employees did get their regular paychecks, they did not get the bonus money that they were awarded from the previous hearings. So while they did get paid, no extra cheese on that Whopper. Now moving on to the current 2025 lawsuit involving the government shutdown, it is related to the expiration of the SNAP benefits. Now, the SNAP benefits cost the government about $8 billion a month, and that amount is budgeted or appropriated by Congress. But that budget or appropriation is only good for a year and it's got to be renewed. Well, the current budget lapsed on October 1st, and since Congress can't convene due to the shutdown, that means the budget and the appropriations cannot be renewed, hence SNAP benefits expiring. And the lawsuit revolves around something called the SNAP Contingency Fund. The contingency fund contains about $8 billion. And that's in place in case the budget that Congress approves is not adequate and runs out of money. And when that happens, the contingency fund kicks in to make sure that everyone can get their benefits and there's no breakdown or no gap in benefits. But the government is not using the contingency fund to fund the shortage, and the lawsuit has been filed to force the government to use the contingency fund to extend the SNAP benefits during the shutdown. Now, on the surface, that argument makes sense because it's a contingency fund. The benefits have expired. That's what the fund is for, to make sure if there's a shortage that people still get the benefits. But the government's taking the position that, well, it doesn't work that way. The contingency fund only comes into play once the money appropriated runs out. And since Congress hasn't met and appropriated more money, then there's no appropriation to run out, and hence the contingency fund cannot be accessed. Now here's the part you're going to find really interesting. Now, prior to the lawsuit, the government agency responsible for administering SNAP benefits posted on their website that they knew the shutdown was coming, but pretty much don't worry, there's a contingency fund in place for this situation, and benefits will be paid during the shutdown because there's a contingency fund. That was on their website. After the lawsuit was filed, they took that part down. That is correct. The government website responsible for administering SNAP benefits had a post on their website laying forth a plan to extend SNAP benefits based on the contingency fund, and after the lawsuit was filed, they removed that plan from their website without explanation. Now, the judge assigned to the case has not made a decision, but has already indicated that she's somewhat indignant that the government is actually fighting using these funds instead of just giving the American people the money so they can get food. And she's actually indicated she's leaning toward ordering the government to use this money. So there's a good chance by the time this podcast is released that the judge has actually made her decision and ordered the government to pay the money and make sure people get the food. However, I would not be surprised if in this circumstance, the government, instead of just paying the money and making sure our citizens can eat, they appeal the decision and actually spend more time fighting the decision and more time making sure people don't get the money instead of just paying the money and moving on and getting our people fed. By the time this podcast is released, I think it's very likely the judge will order the government to use a contingency fund and extend the SNAP benefits. I'm going to call it like I see it. The government agency responsible for making sure that SNAP benefits are extended to individuals that need food assistance had a clear plan and intent to use a contingency fund to extend SNAP benefits in this situation. To remove the plan from their website and make legal arguments to prevent Americans from having the money to buy food is spiteful and Philistine. If the judge does in fact order the government to use a contingency fund, I would not be surprised if the administration actually appeals the decision and continues making more legal arguments instead of spending their efforts serving the people they're sworn to serve. You might agree with me, or you might not like what I'm saying. I really don't give a damn. Either way, do me a favor, share this podcast, post your comments, and call it like you see it. That's it. Well, that's all I got, but I do appreciate you taking the time to join me on this legal deep dive. I think it's always fun to discuss these topics, tell you what I think, and get your feedback. I would really appreciate it if you took the time to like the video, subscribe to the podcast, and also I'd appreciate you sending me your comments so we can discuss the topics you want to hear about. That's it.